You come inside after mowing, shoes damp with grass, dust stuck to your shins, and that itch behind your knee will not quit. So you bend down, you look closer, there it is, a dark speck, no bigger than a poppy seed, locked into the soft crease of your skin. That tiny dot can carry Lyme disease. Some bites can even trigger alpha-gal syndrome, where a hamburger or a strip of bacon suddenly becomes a medical problem. One bite, one afternoon in a normal yard. But here is the part most people miss. That tick probably did not wander in from some distant forest this morning. It likely grew up nearby, feeding in stages, hiding in shade, waiting where your yard gave it cover. The real question is not just how it found you, it is what helped raise it. Because the first surprise is that the lawn is probably not the place that raised it. That is where Simon Hershberger comes in. He studies yards the way most people study forests, looking for the small choices that let ticks stay alive between blood meals. In this video, he is going to walk you through 6 ordinary yard features that can feed a tick population without looking dangerous at all. But first, the honest part. You cannot make a yard completely tick-free. Birds drop ticks. Deer carry them across property lines. Mice, chipmunks, raccoons, and neighborhood cats move through the same edges you do. So the goal is not a magic barrier or one weekend spray that erases the problem. The goal is to stop helping them. That matters because a Connecticut study found that most deer ticks recovered on lawns were found within 9 feet of the lawn edge. Not the center, not the open sunny grass where you can see everything. The edge, where grass meets leaves, where shade lingers, where a tidy yard quietly becomes habitat. And to understand why those 9 feet matter, you have to see a tick for what it really is. A fragile bag of water with legs. A tick survives by not drying out. That is the first rule. Not biting, not disease, moisture. A deer tick spends most of its life off an animal, waiting in the low, damp layer where sunlight does not reach and wind does not pull water from its body. Leaf litter is perfect for that. So are shaded stone walls, overgrown edges, stacked brush, and the matted strip where grass clippings and leaves collect under shrubs. Then comes the second rule. A fed female tick drops off her host, crawls into that protected layer, lays roughly 1,000 to 3,000 eggs, and dies. Those eggs hatch into larvae that are not born carrying Lyme disease. They start clean. What changes them is the first small animal they feed on. White-footed mice are one of the most important reservoir hosts because they can carry the bacteria without quickly clearing it. When clean larvae feed on infected mice, many of those larvae become infected too. Later, as nymphs, they are tiny, hungry, and much harder for you to notice. So the engine has 2 parts. Wet shelter keeps ticks alive, and mice can turn harmless larvae into future risk. And that is why one of the most innocent fall chores may be building the nursery. The pile looks harmless because it is out of the lawn. You rake the open grass clean, you blow the leaves past the last mowing strip, they land at the wood line, in a soft brown berm where the dog cuts through and your shoes brush the edge. That is the problem. In Monmouth County, New Jersey, researchers tested this exact habit. They added extra blown leaves to some yard edge plots and compared them with plots where leaves were not piled up. The leaf-loaded plots held roughly 3 times as many black-legged tick nymphs, not a few more, 3 times. The reason is simple. A deeper leaf layer stays wetter. It blocks sun, slows wind, and keeps the ground from drying out. For a tick, that is shelter. In winter, it is also insulation. Separate field studies in Connecticut and Maine found better tick survival where leaf litter stayed intact through the cold months. So blowing leaves to the property edge may make the lawn look cleaner while concentrating tick habitat right where people and pets pass between yard and woods. But leaves do not infect ticks by themselves. For that, the yard needs small tenants. A wood pile is not feeding ticks. Neither is a brush pile, a rock pile, or that old stone wall at the back of the yard. What they feed is mice. Stack firewood on bare soil, tight against a shaded fence or garage wall, and you have made a dry roof with dark tunnels underneath. Add bark flakes, weeds, and last fall's leaves, and a white-footed mouse can nest there with cover on every side. That matters because larval ticks need their first blood meal from something small. When that first host is a mouse, the tick can pick up the bacteria that causes Lyme disease. Later, as a nymph, it climbs low grass or leaf litter and waits for a leg, your leg. The better setup is boring but powerful. Keep firewood off the ground on a rack. Put it in a dry, sunny spot. Leave airflow around it. Move brush piles away from the yard edge or remove them entirely. Stone walls are trickier because they look beautiful, but shaded stones with leaves caught in the gaps make perfect edge habitat. And sometimes the mouse buffet is not a pile of wood at all. but something hung up for songbirds. A bird feeder is a different kind of problem because the evidence is weaker. Bird feeders have not been proven to pull ticks into a yard all by themselves. Ticks are not smelling sunflower seed from the fence line and marching toward it. But the spill zone under a feeder can do something that matters. It gathers the animals ticks use. Look under an old feeder in the shade. Cracked seed, hulls, damp soil. A little ring of trampled ground where mice, chipmunks, and squirrels come back again and again. To you it is bird food. To them it is a reliable meal in one safe spot. That is why extension programs, including yard guidance like Yukon's, often flag feeders. Not because the feeder is magic. Because it can concentrate small mammals near the same deck, steps, and play area where people move through low vegetation. The fix is simple. Move feeders away from the house, decks, and places children sit. Rake beneath them often. Use trays if you keep them up. And during peak nymph months, consider taking them down. The next yard feature has much stronger evidence, and many people paid good money to plant it. Japanese barberry looks harmless because it was sold that way. It is a neat ornamental shrub, thorny stems, small oval leaves, bright red berries that hang on after other plants look bare. You see it along foundations, at property edges, and in older landscaping where nobody remembers planting it. But inside that shrub is a different yard. The branches grow so dense that sunlight and wind barely get through. Leaf litter stays damp, the air underneath holds humidity, and that matters because ticks dry out easily. In open, dry places, they have to retreat down into the litter to survive. In barberry, they can stay active longer, waiting higher and longer for something warm to brush past. The Connecticut Agricultural Experiment Station in Yukon found the difference was not subtle. Areas with uncontrolled Japanese barberry had about 120 infected ticks per acre. Where barberry was contained, about 40. Where there was no barberry, about 10. That is not just a plant problem, it is a microclimate problem. The same principle can show up in other dense ground covers at the yard edge. Pachysandra, ivy, myrtle, anything that makes a cool, damp, protected mat can give ticks more usable hours. But the shrubs are only half the mistake. The other half is where we choose to sit, play, and relax. Now picture the place where the kids spend the most time. The swing set is tucked under the maples because the metal slide gets hot in July. The sandbox sits beside the hedge because it feels protected. A bench goes at the back fence because that is where the yard feels quiet. To people, that is the comfortable zone. To ticks, it is the survival zone. Ticks need moisture. They do not fly, jump, or chase you across the lawn. They wait on low vegetation and leaf litter, and when the air gets too dry, they retreat. Shade slows that drying. Hedges block wind. Mulch and leaves hold dampness against the soil. So families often place the highest use objects exactly where tick density is highest. In the first few feet where lawn meets woods, shrubs, fences, and ornamental beds. The better move is simple. Pull playsets, benches, sandboxes, and sitting areas into open, sunnier lawn. Put distance between bare legs and the edge. A 3-foot band of wood chips or gravel can help because it creates a dry transition. But it is not a magic wall. It reduces friendly habitat. It does not stop every tick. And even if the edge is cleaned up, the largest delivery system may still be walking through at dusk. That delivery system is the white-tailed deer. Adult black-legged ticks feed and mate on deer. Then the swollen females drop off into the places deer use: wooded edges, garden beds, brushy corners, and the strip behind the garage. Each one can lay thousands of eggs. So the question is not just, do deer pass through? It is, did you plant dinner for them? Hostas along the foundation, yews by the steps, fallen apples under the old tree, tender ornamentals at the lawn edge. To you, it is landscaping. To a deer, it is a buffet line that ends beside your house. The science is messy, which matters. In Lyme, Connecticut, researchers fenced deer out of wooded residential areas and saw tick larvae crash dramatically. Fewer deer meant fewer adult ticks feeding, mating, and dropping eggs there. But newer suburban property studies found no clear overall difference between fenced and unfenced lots. Why? Because a fence that deer can skirt, jump, or enter through an open gate is mostly theater. Reducing attraction can matter more than symbolic fencing. Once all 6 are visible, the real villain is not a tick, a deer, or even a shrub. It is the edge. Not the bright middle of the lawn where the mower passes in clean stripes. The edge, where leaves collect under shrubs, where shade stays damp after breakfast, where mice move through stone walls, deer browse at dusk, and your dog pushes its nose into the cool green strip. That is where the 6 pieces gather. But many treatments do the opposite. They focus on the lawn because the lawn is visible, simple, and repeatable. A truck arrives. A hose unrolls. The open grass gets covered in a pattern you can see from the kitchen window. That does not make lawn services villains. It makes this a mismatch. A recurring spray can miss what one afternoon can change. The leaf pile behind the shed. The brush touching the fence. The host plants drawing deer to the same narrow corridor. The tick behind your knee did not begin in open sunlight. It likely came from the margin you stopped noticing. So the answer to the tick behind your knee is not a product first. It is a walk along the edge. Start this week with a 9-foot walk. Not the whole yard, just the band where your lawn meets woods, hedges, fences, stone walls, sheds, and plantings. Move slowly. Look for damp leaves, brushy corners, stacked wood and shade, low branches, and any place a mouse could travel without crossing open grass. That is the checklist. Rake out leaf piles, lift firewood off the ground and move it into sun. Cut back brush that touches the fence. Remove Japanese barberry where it forms dense cover. Move playsets and dog runs away from the edge. Keep bird feeders where spilled seed does not pull mice toward the house. Do not plant a deer buffet along the property line. And if one strip stays messy no matter what, consider a band of wood chips or gravel to make the edge drier and less inviting. That is probably what helped raise the tick before it found you. Not one monster hiding in the woods, a chain of small comforts, moisture, hosts, access. So check yourself, your children, and your dogs every time you come in. Nymphs are tiny, and one bite can matter. If you find a problem spot on your 9-foot walk, leave it in the comments. Thank you for watching.